Hey friends, it's Loree with the blog wagonwheelhomestead.com. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to do something really fun. We're going to spend 2 or 3 hours making some Thanksgiving side dishes that are great for make ahead. So as you all know, I'm almost ready to have this baby and it's a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. I very well could have it the week of Thanksgiving if I go based on what my history is. And so I would just like to have a few things in the freezer ahead of time for Thanksgiving dinner. And so I'm going to share with you what I think I can make ahead for Thanksgiving. So you can get all of these recipes and more, like a whole bunch more of my favorite Thanksgiving recipes, from the turkey all the way down to all the desserts, in my free ebook called A Farm to Table Thanksgiving. It's all the recipes in it are sourdough, if it applies to that recipe. Like obviously the mashed potatoes don't have sourdough in them, but the gravy is made with sourdough and all the things. So it can be very easy for you to eat all of that if you happen to be gluten intolerant or diabetic or whatever. Anyway, so you can get all of that in my free ebook, Farm to Table Thanksgiving, and you can go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly, and then go to Farm to Table Thanksgiving. And I'll put the link to that in the description box below so that you can go find that. So you can download that, print it off. You have all my favorite Thanksgiving recipes. You can literally just start at the top, go right down, make all the recipes, and you will have a full Thanksgiving spread. So I'm happy to share that with you. But today I'm going to just make a few of those recipes, and we're going to make them ahead, and we're going to freeze them. So if you don't want to have to make all the things for Thanksgiving, like the day before and the day of, you want a bunch of, or maybe you're traveling, you want to make a bunch of things ahead of time and have them in the freezer, this video is definitely going to be for you. So we are going to make some fun things. One is a sweet potato casserole, a make ahead mashed potatoes. So it's really nice when you don't have to be mashing the potatoes right before everybody sits down to eat, right? Sourdough dinner rolls, we're going to mix up a batch of those. We're going to mix up some sourdough pie crust, and I'm going to stick some extra pie crust in the freezer. But I'm also going to make the filling and go ahead and make a couple of pumpkin pies. If I have enough pumpkin baked up, I think I do. For a couple pumpkin pies, we'll have those in the freezer. And we're also going to make a pumpkin roll, and a sourdough pumpkin roll, and a sourdough apple roll, which is very similar to the pumpkin roll. So they're, got cream cheese in them, and they're rolled up like a sponge cake. They're really pretty, super easy to make, and very fun, and everybody's absolutely going to love it for Thanksgiving. So that's what we're going to make today. So I'm going to start by mixing up the pie crust and getting that in the fridge, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to use my Bosch mixer. As always, I'm going to start with 5 cups of flour. This is 4 pie crusts. And I'm going to have 2 of the pumpkin pies already made. And then I will make the pecan pie and the apple pie right before Thanksgiving, or even the morning of. They're not that hard to make because I have canned apples. And so it really doesn't make sense for me to make the apple pie ahead of time and then freeze it, because it's already preserved and it doesn't take very long to make it. So same with the pecan. I'm going to add my sugar, my Redmond salt. That's my favorite salt, by the way. I have a link to this in the description box below where you can get a really good deal on Redmond real salt. It has all of the minerals still in it, so it's a really great way to get your trace minerals. Then we're going to add some cold butter, and I just stuck this butter in this morning. And like I said, this is a sourdough pie crust, and that's the recipe that I have for you on the blog. I will tell you, if you don't have sourdough for some reason, you don't have any mixed up, you can use active starter or discard. Discard works just fine. But if you don't have any of that mixed up, you can use buttermilk in place of the sourdough starter. Of course, it won't be as healthy for you, but it will still make a really nice crust. So you can use this same recipe and just use buttermilk instead of the starter, right? The starter is like the liquid in the recipe, and I'm just breaking this up. I'm kind of being lazy and not chopping it all like I usually do, but that's okay. I'm also going to turn my oven on because we're going to start baking the sweet potatoes for the sweet potato casserole. And so I'm going to get my oven preheating for that while this mixes. Okay, and once it's little tiny crumbs, like the butter is really incorporated into the flour, I'm just going to turn it on and put in my sourdough starter just until it comes together. You definitely don't want to overmix it once you get it, once you get the liquid in it. Hold on, that's not working very well. Usually I do this with discard. So let's put a little bit in with a cup like this. And get it all the way down in there, and that will work better. Usually I just pour my buttermilk or my discard right in, but this is active starter, and so it's a little more stringy, which is fine. But it doesn't want to go down in my mixer, so we'll work with it. All right, let's see. We think it's come together enough. Get some more of this starter off the side here. I think it needs just a little bit more. It's kind of a fine line. You don't want to get it too soft. Yeah, just a little bit more. So let's do that. Just a shake more here. That looks better. You feel it. I always have to feel the dough and see what I think. But you see how it comes together really nice, and yet it's not sticky? That's what you're looking for with pie dough. And of course, we're going to chill this before we roll it out, right? But that's what I think. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put this in some plastic wrap or in a bowl in the refrigerator while we do some of our other cooking. And then at the end, we'll mix up those pumpkin pies, get them made, and then, yeah, once they're cooled off, we'll just put them in the freezer.
Now we're going to mix up some sourdough dinner rolls, again in the Bosch. I'm actually going to mix up a double batch of these, and we're just going to let them proof on the counter, and then we're going to roll them into dinner roll sized balls and freeze them, flash freeze them on a cookie sheet. Then we can take them out and put them in a bag, and we'll just save them in the freezer that way. And then I'll have extra dinner rolls ready for another meal. When the baby comes, we can have it just as a side dish with soup or whatever. So you can do this anytime with your dinner rolls. You can just make up a bunch of dough, let it, of course, ferment on the counter and let it rise. And then you can put it in the freezer and have it for a day when maybe you don't have as much time to cook. And now for our sourdough pumpkin roll. These are so much fun. If you've never made a sourdough pumpkin roll, you really need to do it. It's way easier than you might think. So we're just going to put the ingredients into a bowl. You can use your mixer, but I'm letting the sourdough dinner rolls rise in the mixer. So I'm choosing to just use a bowl and whip this little sponge cake like batter up. It's very simple. So again, the recipe's on the blog, wagonwheelhomestead.com. You can go print it off or pin it to Pinterest so you don't lose it. But I'll just tell you what I'm putting in. I'm putting in 1 cup of flour, half a cup of pumpkin puree, half a cup of maple syrup or honey. You can use brown sugar as well. Half a cup of sourdough starter, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, half a teaspoon of salt, 3 eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, half a cup of brown sugar, and a teaspoon of baking soda. And I like to let this long ferment. So if possible, I'm not doing that today just because I'm trying to get all of this stuff knocked out. but you can mix this up and let it set on your counter for a few hours, and then you'll get all the long fermented health benefits of the sourdough. And so once you have it all mixed up, either whether you bake it right away or whether you let it ferment first, doesn't really matter. When you're ready to bake it, preheat your oven to 375 degrees, and then spread this on a parchment-lined baking sheet. It's very important that you use parchment paper, and you'll see why towards the end. And the baking sheet I use is about 13 by 18, whatever size that is, I'm not sure, but I know there's certain sizes, quarter sheet and half sheet. But anyway, it's just a regular baking sheet. Spread it out thinly and bake it at 375 degrees for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to bake very long. You just want the center to be set. And then we're going to roll it up with the parchment paper, and you want to do this when it's hot. Roll it up with the parchment paper still on it, and then I like to set it outside to cool because it's usually cool during this time of year when I make this. Or you can just set it on your counter until it cools, but putting it outside, of course, speeds up the process. Then we're going to mix up the apple cake roll. This is very similar to the sourdough pumpkin roll. Instead of pumpkin puree, we're going to use applesauce in the batter. And then we're also going to use apple pie filling in the filling. This is a really decadent, wonderful dessert. Perfect for any time in the fall, but I thought it would be really good to have for Thanksgiving dinner as well. And just a little side note for you, when your sourdough starter jar gets completely empty like this, it just has a little bit on the edges. All I do is just add more flour and water until it's a nice thick pancake-like consistency, and stir it up and put it back on the counter. So you don't have to worry about leaving enough starter in your jar. Just whatever's on the edges will be enough to turn that all into starter, however much flour and water you decide to feed it. So it's just a really simple way of managing your starter without any measuring or scales or anything like that.
Okay, and our apple roll is hot out of the oven, so I'm going to do the same thing with it. Probably burn my fingers. I may have to let it set for 5 minutes, but I'm going to do my best to roll it up. The hotter it is, the better. So, there we go. Roll it up. I'm going to go stick it outside to cool off. Ooh, hot. Roll it. How to keep it from unrolling. There we go. Okay. All right, now we're going to mix up the filling. I'm going to actually make 3 batches of filling for these pumpkin apple rolls because I'm going to do a chocolate roll just for our family as well. And I'll show you that in a later video. But I'm going to make up 3 batches of filling because the filling is the same. And I'm going to put a bunch, or about 3/4 of a cup of butter. This is homemade butter. You can use whatever butter you want. This is raw butter, straight from the cow. And you can find how I make that on the blog as well. Okay, vanilla. About 3 teaspoons of vanilla. And I'm going to mix this together. And then I made my own powdered sugar as well. So in my Vitamix, I just put 3 cups of sugar and I blended it really well. And so that's the powdered sugar. And then Then we're going to just blend it up. Then for the pumpkin roll, we're going to very carefully unroll it. And it's kind of going to want to stay rolled up, and that's actually okay. And so I'm just going to pull it apart gently, right? Like I don't want this to crack. And I'm just going to use a little spreader, like a little cake decorator spreader, or you could use a spatula. And I'm just going to spread this filling right on the top. And by the way, you can make the batter ahead of time, let it ferment for 8 to 12 hours overnight, whatever. And then it will be long fermented, and it's easier on you if you're gluten-free, or if you want all the health benefits from the sourdough. Typically I do that, but for today I didn't, just because I was in a hurry and I wanted to show you just how quick you can make these up. So if you need a last-minute dessert for a holiday party, these are the ticket. Either one of these, apple or pumpkin rolls, are going to be really easy. Okay, and then very carefully you're going to just peel this parchment paper off and roll the cake back up. You can slice this and serve it right away, but I find it's better if you chill it first, like it slices better if the cream cheese is cold. You can also just wrap it really tight in plastic wrap and put it in the freezer, and that's what I'm going to do. And it'll last for a little while. And again, it's only a couple weeks till Thanksgiving, so it'll certainly last that long. So we're just rolling it up really carefully. And there's your finished pumpkin roll. You know, sometimes the end doesn't look real pretty, and then when you cut the first slice and inside it will look pretty and beautiful. And everyone's going to think that you took a lot of time to do this when you didn't.
For the apple roll, same thing. I just unrolled it once it was cool, put the filling on, and then I am using some of my canned apple pie filling. Now you can also make your own from scratch apple pie filling, and I have a recipe for that in the recipe post on the blog. So we're just going to roll this in here and then roll it up, and it will just add an extra apple flavor. So good and delicious. The next thing we're going to get started is the sweet potato casserole. So these sweet potatoes are from the garden. I don't have very many left because, of course, the garden got hailed. This is the last of them. And some of them kind of were dinged up on the edges, just kind of how they grew with the season. So I am peeling them, and I'm just going to put them in a baking sheet. I actually ended up needing more sweet potatoes than this, and so I just baked up some squash and added some squash to this, and that works out just as well. So you can use squash or sweet potatoes. I like to have at least some sweet potatoes in it, but the squash is totally fine for filling in where needed. So what you're going to want to end up with is approximately 6 cups of baked sweet potatoes, and like I said, I added some squash, 1 cup of brown sugar, half a cup of maple syrup or honey, 4 eggs, 1 cup of heavy cream, a teaspoon of vanilla, a pinch of salt, and a half a cup of melted butter. That is going to be your filling, and we're going to put that on the bottom of a 9x13 pan. Then for the topping, very simple, we're going to use 1 cup of sourdough discard, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of flaked coconut, 1 cup of chopped pecans, and a half a cup of melted butter. We're just going to mix that all together and put it right on top of this sweet potato casserole, and you can either bake it right away, or you can put it in the refrigerator for up to a week, or in the freezer for a while. which is what I'm going to do, and I'll just take it out and let it thaw a day or two before Thanksgiving, and then I'll just bake it the morning of Thanksgiving.
All right, and for the potatoes, so I'm making what I would call probably a double batch. In the Instant Pot, I typically do not peel these. I make these all the time for my family. You've seen me make them before. The recipe's on the blog. It's in the ebook, all the things. But I decided to peel them today just because for Thanksgiving, you know, what if somebody doesn't like peelings in their potatoes? I always peel them if they happen to be non-organic, right? Like if you go buy potatoes at the store, I would for sure peel them. That's just me. But these are garden potatoes, so I usually don't peel them. Anyway, so I've got a big pot of potatoes. I'm going to throw 5 or 6 cloves of garlic in here, raw garlic, and fill them up with water. Probably, I think this says it's the max fill line. Anyway, so I'll just fill this up pretty close to the top here with water. And I'm going to put it in the Instant Pot and turn it on high pressure for 12 minutes. And it, you know, takes probably 20 to 25 minutes for it to actually, you know, build pressure. It goes its 12 minutes, and then I usually release the pressure fairly quick. You know, you flip the little top and release the pressure. I probably won't do that today because I'm not in a huge hurry. And so when these are done cooling, then we will mash them, put them in a pan, and put them in the freezer. So it'll be really simple. These reheat beautifully because of all the fat that's in them. So we're going to put a lot of raw butter in here and some cream cheese and some other seasonings like onion powder, salt, and pepper. They are the best mashed potatoes you will ever eat, I promise. Like, I've never had potatoes like this, and anybody that eats these is like, can we have the recipe? Like, they're that good. So, and the great thing is you can reheat them. So like I said, I'm going to put them in a 9x13 pan and put them in the freezer. You know, you could, if you had a whole bunch of potatoes that were starting to go bad, you could do this with potatoes. Put a bunch of pans of potatoes in the freezer and have mashed potatoes to take out and, you know, reheat, right, for future meals. So you could do that. The other thing that you can do, just while I'm thinking about it, is you can boil potatoes and then shred them for hash browns and freeze them. And that's a great way to preserve them as well. Anyway, this is the last of my garden potatoes, so no need to worry about preserving them. We've eaten them pretty fast, and we didn't have enough because of the hail. Typically, I have, you know, several months worth of potatoes. Anyway, so these will reheat. Again, you can also put them in a crock pot and then put them in your refrigerator for up to a week. So if you don't want to mess with freezing them, if it's less than a week before Thanksgiving, just make them, put them in a crock pot, put the crock pot in the refrigerator, and then stick them in on low for 4 or 5 hours, like the morning, you know, before Thanksgiving dinner, and you'll have perfect, beautiful, soft mashed potatoes. And you won't have to worry about mashing them right before dinner, which is always a blessing. And like I said, you can put some of this in the freezer, and then I'm going to make 2 pumpkin pies. There's a couple different options when you put these in the freezer. You can roll them out and shape them, like put them in your pie plate and freeze them that way. Then take them out and stack them, like in maybe in another pie plate, stack them all up. And you'll have them ready made to like stick in your pie plate, as long as your pie plates are all the same size, and that's a great way to do some freezer stuff. But we're going to actually make the whole pumpkin pie and bake it, and then we're going to freeze it once it cools off. And then we'll just have to get it out and thaw it in the refrigerator, and it will be ready for some whipped cream on Thanksgiving. some real whipped cream, and it's going to be so good. I can hardly wait. So we're just going to roll this out. And then we'll make up our pumpkin pie filling, which is really simple to do.
Thanks for coming along for this Make Ahead Thanksgiving side dish video. I hope that you try these, and I hope that you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you in the next video.